We're going to begin our second half of today. I'd like to again recognize the Lake of the Torches Convention Center staff. You just saw the young lady up here, Jennifer Wilcox. They always put on a great spread, fine accommodations, and it's a very pleasurable experience working with her. So she makes events like these very comfortable. So thank you to her. Also, I'd like to say again that lunch was provided and sponsored by Triax, great company out there that's done some work with our tribe, so thank you to them. At this time, I'd like to introduce Craig Oberg. He is the Avant Energy rep here today, and he's going to be discussing sustainable energy and utility. Thank you.
My name is Craig Oberg. I'm Vice President of Consulting at Avant Energy. And Avant Energy, real quickly, we've been around for just over 30 years now, and we work with three primary groups: municipal utilities, colleges and universities, and then Native American tribes. And when we work with tribes, we do a handful of things. From strategic energy planning to building power plants to helping establish tribal utilities. And that's what I've been asked to talk about today. I'll make it fairly quick because I know I'm right after lunch. You guys are probably taking a nap right now as opposed to talk about electric utilities. But I've got about 20-30 minutes of content. I can answer any questions afterwards. But today we'll talk about why would the tribe want to establish a tribal utility, what exactly would a tribal utility look like, when does it make sense, what should you consider sort of the secret sauce of a tribal utility, and then a brief discussion on how tribes can work together in forming a utility or a consortium of utilities. So why establish a tribal utility? In one word, sovereignty. An electric utility is not going to make a tribe tremendous amounts of money, but it will enhance sovereignty a great deal. And what we mean by sovereignty is taking control of where your power comes from, keeping your electricity costs low, or structuring your electricity costs in such a way that meet the needs of your community, improving customer service, and then enhancing economic development. We'll talk a little bit about each one of these. When we say control your power supply, right now, I think pretty much every tribe represented here today probably buys their electricity from a utility or a co-op or a combination thereof. And the three biggest utilities in Wisconsin are Wisconsin Public Service, Clean Energies, and Alliant. And even if you buy from a small co-op or a small utility, there's a good chance that the small co-ops and utilities even buy power from these guys because they're sort of the 600-pound co-ops. And it might be hard to see this in the back, but essentially what this is showing is these big utilities, like pretty much every utility in the United States, is heavily dependent on coal and other fossil fuels for the source of their electricity. For example, Wisconsin Public Service, who serves this area, is about 70% fossil fuels. And what that means is that for every kilowatt hour that someone on the reservation consumes, they are creating about a pound of CO2. What does that mean, or how do you put that in greater context? The average house in Wisconsin consumes 700 kilowatt hours of power every month. So the average household then creates 700 pounds of CO2 every month, based on WPS's generation. You take that and say that a gaming facility or something like that that consumes 10 times that amount, you start to get into some pretty scary numbers. When you establish your own tribal utility, you have a little bit more control over where your power comes from. If you want to, you can buy 100% renewable, or you can try to minimize the amount of fossil fuels that you're consuming. But you do have a lot more control. Right now, if you're a resident of Lac du Flambeau, 70% of your consumption is fossil fuel. Again, this graph is probably very difficult to see, but all it is a listing of all 50 states, and the gold one is Wisconsin. And so what it's showing is that Wisconsin is in the 75th percentile about for electricity costs, which means not only do we consume dirty power, but we pay a lot for it. And customers of the utilities pay the same rate, regardless of their ability to pay or any other social circumstances. They just pay based on consumption. Now, when you form an electric utility, the objective is to set it up so you pay a lot less for power than you currently do. At the very least, what you'll be able to do is create a rate structure where maybe low-income families don't have to pay as much, or they get a subsidized rate. We're working with one tribe that wants to completely subsidize all electricity for tribal elders. So after a certain age, 65 or something like that, tribal elders never have to pay for electricity. These are some of the rate structures you can set up if you own your own tribal utility. Now you just have to pay a rate based on what the utility is. I don't know if you guys saw this. I think it was like in 2007 or 2008, CBS did an investigation on the Crow Creek Reservation, and they found that 14% of the households in the Crow Creek Reservation didn't even have access to electricity. And the utility who served, the co-op that served the reservation was unwilling to run electricity to the houses because it wasn't in their financial best interest. The utility and a handful of other partners also built a hydro plant on the reservation or near the reservation, promising the reservation that they would get access to the power, and they never did. The reservation they found was the last of the utilities customers to get updated infrastructure when they would go through and update substations or transformers or poles and wires. And anytime there was a major outage, the reservation was the last of the customers to have their power turned back on. So let's hope that this is a worst case scenario, but at least what it does do is it illustrates that if you establish your own tribal utility, there's probably a lot more responsiveness to an outage because the tribal utility is a member of the community. You know, if someone's greatly loses power, the tribal utility will probably have a crew out there right away. Enhancing economic development. This sort of comes in different forms. The example I use is Lac du Flambeau, just because that's where we are. But right now, Lac du Flambeau pays Wisconsin Public Service every time you turn on a light switch or a toaster or a curling iron for the use of their electricity. And that money leaves the reservation, never comes back, and funds an organization that doesn't employ tribal members. If you establish a tribal utility, even if the tribal utility just breaks even, those revenues stay on the reservation, and they fund an organization that employs personnel. Another side to this is, if you have a tribal utility, best practice would be to have them intimately involved with all economic development. So to use an example, if you were planning to build a business park, the tribal utility would be involved in the planning, and they would have electricity running to that area you were ready to flip the switch. Now, if you were to build a business park, you can go through the headache of the planning and the setup, and then you just have to get into a queue with We Energies or Wisconsin Public Service, whoever your co-op is, and they'll get to it when they can. Based on the previous slide, it seems like some utilities take their dear sweet time in responding to the needs of the reservation. And a lot of times what utilities will do is if you need to run power to a certain area for a new housing development or a business park, they're going to make you share in the cost anyways. So if you got to pay for it, why not own it as a tribal utility? So what would a utility look like? Right now there's ratepayers, whether it's a gaming facility, whether it's a household, whether it's a commercial building, whatever it might be, pays money to an off-reservation utility, and in return, you get electricity. Pretty simple. In the tribal utility setup, the ratepayers would pay the tribal utility like we talked about. And the tribal utility would distribute that electricity then to the tribal members. So that means that the tribe would buy the substation, all the poles and wires that you see running along the roads, and they would own and operate those. And they would be responsible for outages and making sure that anytime they flip the switch, the lights would turn on. Now, the tribal utility would have to pay some electricity provider for that power. It could be a wind farm, it could be another utility, it could be, you could generate your own electricity if you really wanted to. And then the electricity provider provides the tribal utility electricity, in turn distributing it to its rate payers. So why did I take some time to show this? The key or the secret sauce in setting up a utility is you have to make sure that the rates you charge your customers as a tribal utility are high enough to cover the costs of procuring your electricity and distributing it to your rate payers. So when you go through an upfront assessment, that's essentially what you're doing, is can you charge a rate that is equal to or less than what you're currently getting charged by your off-reservation utility to fund a sustainable organization. Things that you should consider. Market price should drive any decision to form a utility. As much as enhancing sovereignty is an admirable goal, if it's not a financially sustainable organization, it doesn't make sense to set up, which speaks to the previous slide. And market price for electricity is going to be key in determining that situation. You're going to want to fairly early in the process define how much control council or the tribe has over the utility. I think Mr. McFarland was talking about this earlier. You're going to want to insulate it from tribal politics as much as possible, because this is a business, and you want to make sure that you can make decisions in accordance with the business as opposed to any sort of political interference. And then the other thing you have to consider is you've got to field the utility team. Once you buy the poles and wires, you're responsible for making sure they're operating. So you need linemen who can jump in the bucket trucks and swing the wrenches and what have you. You need administrative staff, and executives, and all the rest. And those are sort of the things you need to think about before you pull the trigger on utilities, making sure you can staff banding together as tribes, and Chairman Wiggins was talking a little bit about this morning, but there are things called power agencies out there, and non-tribal communities have been doing it for a while now. A good example is one of our clients is Minnesota Municipal Power Agency, and they have very similar characteristics to a series of tribes. They're smaller communities, some of them are very remote, and they had small utilities, and they couldn't compete with the big guys. And so they banded together and formed what they call the power agency. This is something that the tribes could easily do as well. And what you do is you get the benefits of economies of scale. Rather than going out and buying a couple of megawatts off the market, you might be buying 50. You just get a better price. And then you can also spread some of the costs of operating a utility across multiple tribes. Cost and risk across multiple tribes. And then you can take advantage of geographic differences. Bad River was talking about building a biomass facility because they have access to tremendous amounts of wood. Maybe Ho-Chunk has good wind resources in the southwest. You can sort of band together and pick out what makes most sense depending on where a tribe might be located. But the entire agency benefits. Be happy to answer any questions if you guys have it. You're going to have Steve walk up the doors. Yeah.
Great, we do that. Does it not work most of the time related to the cost of
Yeah, it would be rare where a tribe could be in a situation where they would start a utility and generate their own electricity simultaneously. The investment would just be too large to bite off, in one fell swoop. So more than likely what would happen is a tribe would form a utility and then purchase power from the market or from another power producer. There's plenty of cheap megawatts out there that people are trying to unload right now.